Welcome to the Work-Life Balance Podcast. I am Kara.
And I am Maggie.
Together, we're a power real estate team with the Bajetti Partners in Nashville.
We believe that the hustle culture of today's driven entrepreneur who lives and works in Middle Tennessee
requires balance. Hey guys, welcome back to Work-Life Balance with Kara and Maggie.
Welcome back.
We're back again. So today's topic.
I was going to cut in and then I didn't know if you were going to keep talking.
So, okay. Everything in real estate revolves around investing, right? So we just thought we'd give you a little bit of 411 on what that looks like and different opportunities and just kind of give you what different ways you can actually invest in real estate. And then
and how to get started.
Because I think like anybody, the goal is to have something tangible that makes you money and it creates financial freedom in the future.
Absolutely.
And that's I feel like is the goal.
Right.
It was for me at least. I don't know. Is that your goal too, Meg?
Duh, yes. Duh, yes, it is 100%. So when we were talking about this, we were talking about like ways to talk about it because we talk about it all the time in our daily. But I think the number one thing that you need to think about first before you decide what mode of investing you want to go with is what is your goal? Mm-hmm. Do you want to have 10 properties? Do you want to have one? Do you want to be like full-blown investor, flipper, get into the whole contracting thing, or do you just want to own property?
Right.
So making a plan is very, very important.
I think you need to make a plan because if you don't have a plan, it's really kind of hard to even figure out where you're going to start.
Right.
Right. So like Maggie said, like, is your goal to have one Airbnb and just that's the supplemental income to your daily grind in the workforce? Or is your future look like, hey, I want to be chilling on the beach and going to the mailbox and getting my cash every month?
Yeah. Right?
So it looks different for everybody and that there's one's not better than the other. It just really depends on what your plan is. So we don't want to overwhelm you with all the different ways of investing, but I think if you have that in the back of your head on what you kind of think, and if you don't, I feel like you're going to know by the end of this conversation because there's stuff on here or there's different ways that might not be even tangible for you as a beginning investor.
Right. You have to make baby steps.
You got to make baby steps and look at it as like a whole, like, hey, I could start here and then eventually I'm going to build to this. Right. Right. I mean, I know that's what you're looking at.
For sure. And I think everybody has to start small and you have to start somewhere, which is the whole thing of like making a plan, figuring out what your goal is with it. Right. Because you can make lots of money in investing in real estate, but if you don't have a plan and a goal to get you where you want to go, then it's kind of pointless. Right. Because what are you going to use it for? Mm-hmm. Why are you doing it? All the things. Why is most important. So we wanted to kind of go through all of the different modes of investing and talk about like how to start in that way and pros and cons and things that can help you get started and figure out if that's the best way for you to go about it.
Yeah. And I wanted to preface too, for me, I've been involved in most of the different ways so that I'm coming to you as somebody that's been experienced in a little bit. Like my background is honestly just real estate is kind of in the blood. It actually is 100% in the blood. Like coming back to like grandpa was the first to open a real estate office in Central Valley, California. Like, so I got to sit like front row in watching what apartment complex looks like, what big commercial development looks like, what production of homes look like. My father built thousands of homes, and then my husband and I, able to, take our rental portfolio and grow up substantially within a certain amount of time.
Absolutely.
So, like, I feel like I'm kind of able to express how I feel about these things, take it or leave it. There's always somebody better, but I was there. I started from scratch, and I know what it looks like. So, let's start off with rental properties. Okay. So, rentals is one great way, especially baby steps, to get into the market.
Absolutely.
There's so many different looks at rentals, single family, multifamily, and above, right?
Absolutely.
So for my personal experience, we started with the cute little 2-1 rental, and then it, that was able to subsidize the mortgage payment by a couple $100, and that was the goal. Yeah. Like, hey, there's positive cash flow, and that's all we looked at. So,
absolutely. Which I think people have kind of a skewed, like, I guess, view on rentals because they just focus on like that monthly number. Whereas I feel like with rentals, you really need to look at long-term value.
Sure.
Because a lot of times in that year, like, yes, you're going to have overages every month, but there's likely going to be something that happens year over year where you're spending that money on your property, whether it's taxes, whether it's fixing something. And there's ways to go about, you know, remedying that, like warranties and all of that kind of stuff too.
Right.
But if you are going for rentals, like, definitely have in your head, this is a long-term play.
Yeah, well, and that's the best part about rentals is you get to take care of, you get the appreciation in the long-term game. So, yeah, but you also get the flip side. Now, if the market takes a dump, obviously your rental is going to go down. Mm-hmm. The beauty of that, though, is the steady income of it. Right. So even if the market went down and you lost a little bit in your value, you hopefully will still have a tenant in there that's still giving you that monthly income. So, I mean, obviously the ultimate goal is to have rental income and appreciation and long-term it out, and that's what you're doing.
For sure.
You know, so, I mean, and I think we spoke about this last week about the inflation hedge, and I think that that's another really good, a really good route when you're having rentals.
Yeah, being able to, you know, use that asset to continue to pay yourself, even when, you know, if, you know, the world ends or whatever, you're still having that, rental income that's coming to you every month. And it can really help you in hard times if the entire economy is struggling, right?
Absolutely.
Then you have that supplemental.
And if you lose your job, but you still have a rental, like, I just think, like, it, because it's so tangible, you can control it, you can drive by it.
Absolutely.
You know, everybody needs a home.
Absolutely. And you just said a good point, like real estate as a whole and just everything we talk about today. The reason that I know you love real estate and I like it too is it is tangible. Yeah. If something happens, you do lose your job with rentals. If you've held on to that rental for a while, you have appreciation, something happens in your life, then that is also like a security blanket of, one, if you just want to use it for monthly income, but if something major happens and you need to sell it and pull out your equity, that's an option too.
You can do that. You can pull a HELOC on it. I mean, there's so many options, you know, in a perfect world that the appreciation is going up. Yes, but also if the appreciation didn't go up and you lost your job, but your tenant's making your mortgage payment, you still have a piece of that, right? So clearly I am a rental person. I love it. Right. And I think it's just, I think everybody should invest in getting some property.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think there's multiple ways to go about like acquiring rentals. I think the way that I'll probably do it is a little bit different than how you did it. I'm very comfortable with moving. So if you are comfortable with moving, then a good way to maybe go about it would be, you know, buy your very first home with your FHA loan, stay there for a year, buy something else with a low down payment loan, move, hold on to that, make it a rental, wait a year, use another like low percentage down payment that you can get. Because if you live in them as your primary residence, you're able to qualify a lot easier for them. Yep. So you're not putting 20-25% down, because I know that can be really tough for a lot of young people.
Well, and that's a good point. It definitely is a bigger initial investment when it comes to rentals, because you do have to go in with a larger down payment. There's so many different programs out there now, though, the rental flip rehab loans. And in fact, Mark Neely is going to be specializing a lot in that with his new brokerage. But
saw that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways of going about that. So don't be scared about it, because if you get outside of the cookie cutter loan and you go to a rental flip rehab loan, you can go in with a lot less of a down payment. Yeah. So there's so many options. You know, I love the way you're thinking. Like, you've got the cute townhome you're living in right now, and I know that's going to be your rental next year or whenever it happens for you. But you were able to live in it, and now you're going on the next thing, and that's going to be perfect to start your portfolio.
For sure. Which you do have to think about, okay, will my rent cover my mortgage?
100%.
Because if it doesn't, then it doesn't make sense. But in my case, it does. Like, my mortgage is $1,500. The rental right beside me, it actually just got rented this past month, rented for $1,950. Yeah. Which is crazy. That's $450 a month, right?
Well, make sure you're taking into effect insurance and
utilities and things too. But I mean, you have to make sure that if you're going to buy something, that the numbers make sense on it.
Absolutely.
Because in a lot of areas it doesn't. Right. But a place like Murfreesboro or Nashville or Franklin, typically it does.
So, and I did similar. I didn't live in them, but I would refinance, pull out the cash, buy the next. Refinance, pull out the cash, buy the next.
So I know a lot of people have been hearing about that lately. So if you just want to do like a really quick crash course on what a HELOC actually is, I think people hear about it a lot but don't know how to put it into action.
Well, the HELOC's a little bit different than what I did, but a HELOC is taking the appreciation of the home you own right now. So basically, it's a home equity line of credit. So say you're sitting on $200,000 of equity in your personal residence or your rental residence, you can go and get a HELOC, which means you can take out up to 80% loan to value, and then basically you pay interest on used funds. Yeah. So if you don't use all the $200,000 or whatever your HELOC is amount, you're only paying on what? So maybe you only take $20,000 of that and you put it down on a property.
Right.
So then that would be that, right? The other money just sits in like a holding account and you're not touching it. Mm-hmm. So that's a great way. If you've got a home that's got equity in it, that's a fantastic way to get into the rental game.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think that kind of covers rentals. What do you think? You have anything else to add on rentals?
Talk for hours.
I mean, I know rentals. There's like so many modes that you could go through it. There really is two ways for rentals, though. Either you are cash heavy and you can go put 20-25% down on a property, get a good payment, cash flow on it, keep it, get a return on your investment, or you can live in them and move from one to another and go that route if you're not as cash rich.
Right. Yeah. No, there's plenty of ways, and we can talk more about that again. So the other thing that we talked about, or we have on our list, is house flipping. All right, so house flipping, that's another way to invest into real estate. And that also looks different for everybody. So, there's people that go to the court steps and they buy, and then they flip. And there's people that buy a distressed property that needs a ton of work, and then they remodel it and flip it. I mean, there's just different avenues. My experience is we like to buy properties that are distressed and need a full remodel because that's just our expertise with my husband being a GC. So that's just what we've always done.
Right.
We've also done the auctions where you go and you bid. That's a whole nother level. You need to have a lot of cash because you have to pay cash at the auction steps. But house flipping, I mean, I know it's something that intrigues you, and we're probably going to do one together, and we've talked about this before.
I hope so.
Yeah. It's just, it can be very, very positive, but there's also high risk.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
high risk on them too.
Which you just went through that, right? Like, just for perfect example, Kara bought this flip. She wanted to add square footage. Later realized she couldn't add square footage. So then you completely have to pivot. And that happens a lot when you're flipping houses because there's a lot of unknowns when you start digging into stuff and pulling permits to change things. And
for sure. It's a snowball when you start digging, especially old homes.
Right.
But they can be super profitable. It's just, again, high risk because you're putting out a lot of money in hopes somebody's going to buy it and you're going to get your money back.
Yeah. So you have a lot of experience with this, and I love learning from you about it. So how, if somebody wanted to go the flipping route and, had the means to be able to do that as far as, connections with contractors and things like that, what are some ways to go about getting financing for a flip if you're not super cash heavy and can just pay cash for the renovations or the house as a whole?
Well, there's, again, those rehab loans, which I would say if you're into any of this, you want to get into this, you really need to look at that loan. It's the rental rehab renovation loan. It's awesome. So that would be, I think, for somebody that does not have a lot of cash, and I think you can put maybe 20% down, and maybe there's less. The other program is that Lending Home. We've used them before. That is that's basically like a hard money loan, but they're pretty competitive with the interest rates on the market. Okay. So you can almost get 1 for 7%.
Oh, wow.
Where other hard money loans, you're looking at 10, 12.
Way more.
And there's just a lot more to it. And that you have to look at that because that's taking on a lot of your profit with that monthly payment.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's something we talk about too, is if I were wanting to do a flip, the route I would probably have to go would be hard money, just the situation I'm in. Sure. And that's one big factor for why really I haven't done it yet or found a property to do it with yet, because you do have to have the cash to be able to float whatever your hard money loan payment is for the amount or for the duration of your flip, right? Yeah. So whether it takes 3 months, 6 months, a year, you have to be able to carry that payment for that time.
And you have to factor that in when you're factoring your numbers.
Yeah.
So I want to make X amount of money. Well, what's all the carrying costs? And it's not just your mortgage payment that you're carrying if you're not paying cash. It's your taxes, your insurance, anything else, maintenance on it, because you got to keep the landscape looking good while it's on the market. Yeah. There's a lot of things that you have to factor in. So if that's your route, fantastic. I love it. Live for it. But it takes practice, and I don't want you to go in blindfolded on that one.
Absolutely.
Because there are, like you said, a lot of hiddens, and it's very risky if you don't know your market.
100%. And that's why, for me personally, I want to get into flipping. Like, that's something that I have a huge interest in. But I know that I want to do my first one with Kara because she has lots of experience. And I feel like that's just something, flipping a whole house by yourself is not something you want to do without having experience first. Especially if you're somebody, too, that wants to, you know, become a builder or get into contracting and start going from the ground up. I would definitely start with flips, too, so you can get your feet wet first before you just go full-blown into it.
I think my husband would tell you that building a home ground up is easier than doing a remodel.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough.
It's tough, and it just, you never know when you open a wall. You're like, oh, crap, we got black mold.
Yeah.
Boom, now it's all gone. Oh, didn't factor that one in because you didn't know it. So, yes, make sure you do your homework before you start flipping. That's just...
Yeah. So that is definitely somebody, if you have a goal to kind of make money quickly, but you need to do it a smart way, flipping would be a good route of investing to go for you. And then this next one is something that Kara and I talked about, which is a newer topic and something that you didn't necessarily see as much of when you were getting into investing at first.
No, not at all. And I don't think that this even really was a big deal where I was at in California. It didn't come across my desk, like ever. And maybe it was called something different, but out here I noticed when I first started looking at investments online and what was coming up, I kept seeing this wholesaling. I'm like, what the hell is wholesaling? I don't understand what that means. So basically, and long story short, an investor contracts a property. They get it under contract, right? And then it's mostly undervalued home. Like, so let's do an example. The home's listed for $250. They get it under contract for $200.
Yeah.
So they're now trying to, before that closes escrow, they're trying to assign that to a new buyer at a different price to basically pay a fee of wholesaling it. So they're like kind of like acting as a middleman, and then you all close coincidentally at the title company. So sellers there and wholesalers there and new buyers there.
Yeah. So you essentially, if Kara's has the contract right for $200, I'm going to take it from her. She's going to give the contract to me at $250 instead of $200, and Kara's going to make the $50,000 difference for giving that contract to you at a different price, and you just basically take the profit.
That's your profit.
Yeah.
So I see that there are so many wholesalers in Middle Tennessee.
You know what? I think I didn't start seeing anything about that before COVID.
Really?
I started seeing all of the videos and all of the talk on wholesaling in real estate when COVID was happening. And that became very popular because, I mean, you know, social media has really blown up over the past few years, especially when COVID happened. And I saw all these videos start to pop up about it. It was something I never heard of before, but it became popular for people that realized they can make money in real estate from their house. And also, to be a wholesaler, you don't have to have your real estate license. That's why a lot of people like it too, because you don't have to be licensed in order to make money in real estate per se.
And I think from what I understand in my experience, because I have bid on a couple of them, is they want cash.
Yep.
And it's completely as is. You get one day to go and do like your preliminary inspections, but you don't get to come back and ask for any repairs. So you're essentially buying a property that you don't really have a ton of information on, and you're being sold as is. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
You're buying it as is with cash. So the wholesaling is more structured to sell to investors, not to buyers like that are just going out to buy a home with financing.
Yeah.
They don't want, in my experience, it's only been cash.
Yeah, for
I don't know if you've seen it differently than that, but
so if you're going to go into wholesaling, it's really going to be you behind a computer looking for really good deals, and you sell those deals to somebody else.
And they want cash. And
And if you're not, that's the thing too, and that's the risk with wholesaling is like, if you get that under contract and you're promising to pay somebody that and you're not able to reassign it, that's on you.
Yeah. So again, risky. I mean, you know, I think it just sidebar as an investor, risk creates reward, right? But if you don't take the risk,
never get the reward.
You never get the reward, and the other vice versa is you take the risk and you have to be willing to lose too, which we don't want to lose, but let's be realistic on this whole podcast because we're not trying to tell you that these are all foolproof ways of getting out there and making a windfall quickly.
It's not.
I just don't believe in that. I think you set yourself up and you pick which ones of these that like work for you and your comfortability. But like, it's like investing in the stocks. You want a high risk stock or a low risk stock? Or you like, where do you fall? You know, and that looks different for everybody. So
it does.
Again, if you're going to get into wholesaling, be prepared that, you know, you may end up with a property that you didn't want in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely goes both ways. Yeah. Then you're biting the bullet on that.
Right.
So the next topic or way to invest is commercial real estate. There's definitely a lot of ways to go about this. There's different modes of commercial. You have office spaces, you have retail stores, like apartment complexes. That's considered commercial.
Correct.
So I'll let you dig into that a little bit.
So commercial's not ever been my my personal experience. Besides, like my office was inside my grandfather's big commercial building, and my aunt was a commercial broker. So I sat at the board table and listened and learned that way. I was never really one that, it's a whole nother game. Financially, you need to have real deep pockets to get into big apartment complexes and
or have
huge
people behind
Class A
you.
buildings. Yeah. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar projects. So, as a 30-year-old where I was building my rental portfolio, I wasn't in a financial position to be going and buying an apartment complex.
Yeah.
That just wasn't where I was at. But what I did see and I thought was really cool on both sides of it, like if you are a real estate broker representing commercial properties, you not only you're getting paid on the lease. So if these people, which they usually sign a very long lease, let's call it a 10-year lease at $15,000 a month, you take that $15,000 times the 10 years, that's what you're getting paid on, it's substantial. Big ass money in commercial real estate. Yeah. Anyone that knows it, come join my team because I love it. I think it's fantastic. That's a niche that we haven't tapped into, but that's on the radar.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is, as an investor side, if you're investing into it, you have long-term leases again. So like where rentals are typically 30 days, month to month or year to year, you don't usually do a single family home over a year. But if you're buying a retail space or an office complex or something like that, you're locking your tenant in for X amount of years. Yeah. And if they want to get out of it, they have to pay for it. They don't get to just walk out on you. So that creates longevity in your steady income, right?
Less turnover,
which is huge because it's not something we spoke about with the rentals. But whenever somebody moves out, guess what you got to do? You got to rehab it. So a lot of your profit goes to getting the shit off the carpet.
That's what I was saying about that earlier too. Is like you're gonna spend the money that you make on it.
Yes. So I know that was long winded, but like I really think if you've got the finances to get into commercial, it is a no-brainer.
It is
a beautiful space to be in.
And I'll say this too: there are ways to build up to that using residential to build up to commercial. I'm seeing it. Well, commercial as far as like. Me and my boyfriend have talked, and like a plan for us is we want to do storage units. Right. We've talked about that before. Storage units or car washes, boring businesses that make you good money, right? So that's one way too. But one way that I'm seeing on the other side of the deal right now is these people started with a duplex, and then they sold the duplex, bought a fiveplex. Now they're selling the fiveplex, and the money that they were able to make on the sale of the fiveplex alone, they're buying 22 units.
Nice.
They're buying a 22-unit apartment building.
See, love that.
So you can, like, maybe not that big of a jump, right? Because they went from 5 to 22. But that's a good way to, like, pull your equity out of one, go to something bigger. Pull your equity out of something bigger and buy something even bigger.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely ways to go about it.
Yeah, and I think let's piggyback off that because the next one was crowdfunding. And I think that is also a way to jump into the bigger game. Right. So crowdfunding is when people all pull their money together to create opportunities to invest in larger projects, right? So Grant Cardone's a perfect example of what crowdfunding looks like. You're all giving him your money, and he's going and buying these massive complexes in Miami Beach, you know? So he looks like he's the baller, but guess what? All the investors that are crowdfunding are making that happen for him. So
they're making it happen for him, and they're getting a pretty good return on their money.
They're getting a return on it. So, that might be something that if you have let's use this as an example. Your buddies.
Yeah.
We just closed escrow with them last month. There's 2 months ago. And 3 young kids out of college. I say young kids. I mean, bless their pumpkin hearts. 3 cute little young boys straight out of college. They want to get into the investment game.
Yeah.
They call Maggie the #1 realtor at Jetty Partners.
Other than Kara, obviously. Yeah.
My little
Other
prodigy.
than the Bojetti of the group.
My little prodigy. So they call her. They get all three of them pull their money together and they buy their first property, which is one of many to come. And I think that's so cool. So that's crowdfunding on a smaller level when it's just, hey, you and your friends want to get together and do it.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
I think it is amazing. And there is a con to that too. Like you're trusting somebody else with your money and you're partnering with other people. So there's always the risk to that too, which there's risk in all of this. We've said that 100%. Word so many times in this episode, but you really have to trust the people you're working with. Or if you're going like the crowdfunding where one person is managing the investment and you're just putting money into it, you really need to trust that person. But for my friends in their scenario, they all three graduated college. They all three wanted to invest in real estate. One of them was going to be living in the town for quite some time. And they knew that they could make money off of other people renting per room because that's a huge thing in university towns is making way more money than you would off of like a single family rather than renting per room to all these college kids. But they saw opportunity to, 1, have a low down payment, 2, have really good long-term value because they're in a great location, and then 3, make monthly income off of their friends.
I know. I mean, they're going to pay rent anyway, so why not just you be their landlord?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. They got a nice place to live. They know their landlord. They're paying probably less than they were paying at the other place. And I mean, it's just, so that's very cool. So I think crowdfunding is definitely an opportunity for people to get into the market that don't have all the money themselves.
Well, you did it too with Mark and John and your flip, right? You had multiple people come in and
just him and I. But I mean, I guess like that on a smaller level, that's just more of like a partnership for us. But I've never done like where you get a big group of people. I'm a little bit of a control freak. Yeah. So the more chefs in the kitchen, the more I'm like, but I kind of like to, I just like to have a little more
Kara
control.
needs to be the Grant Cardone running the investment with
I
other
will take all
money.
your money and I will make you a lot, but I'm not going to give you all mine and wait for you to tell me that I made something.
Yeah.
It just makes me nervous, but that's just because I'm a little type A.
Which if you're going the crowdfunding route and you're going to be the point of like the investment, that's a lot to deal with. If you're in Grant Cardone's, obviously he's different, but to use his scenario as an example, he is managing multi-millions of dollars of other people's money. That is a huge stressor.
Have you ever watched Madoff's story?
No, I haven't.
You might want to check that one out. Madoff is the one that took everybody's money. He was a big hedge fund.
Oh, and lost it all?
And was using it for his own benefit. That's a beautiful documentary if you want to see how the south side of stuff can happen. You know, that's just a lot of trust. And it's just like any other hedge fund, like Blackstone, or we talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
When you do REITs, however people want to say that. Do they call them REITs?
REITs.
I mean, that's another way to do real estate investing where you're doing it as a lump sum into a company and then they control your real estate investing for you. It's just, that's definitely like passive. It depends if you're an active investor or a passive investor. Are you wanting to give your money and just hoping to get the 8% return in the mailbox? That's a beautiful way of doing it. Or a 5%, whatever it might be. I don't know.
The way that what you're talking about right now is something we didn't even put on here.
No.
But that's a good thing to talk about, and I've learned a lot about in the past year because the company that Reed works for manages those type of funds as well. Yeah. So I've learned a lot about it, and like Kara said, that is a good way to go about it if you are passive and you want to invest in real estate, but you like the way the stock market works as far as like putting your money somewhere, letting it grow for you rather than having to manage a flip or manage rentals or pay a PMC. Totally. You just throw your money into a REIT or however people say it, and then it'll make money for you. Obviously, the more money you put in, the more money you're going to get out. But
again, you're stepping out of that control, so you need to make sure, be smart on who you use as your hedge fund manager on that.
For sure.
One we skipped, let's go back really quick. Short-term Airbnbs, VRBOs, y'all know that that's been such the hype across the whole nation for the last few years. Obviously, Nashville has been rated #1 for many years next to Palm Springs. I think it's a fantastic way to get into also investing. To me, I love the concept of it because, hey, guess what? I can use that house as my second home too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fun. Like, hey, you want to do a staycation at our own Airbnb in Nashville? You know, so a lot of people do them in Destin, Florida, because we're so close to that.
Which is a good place too.
Yeah, Charleston, North Carolina, they've got some good ones. So I think that's like, that's been pretty lucrative. And of course, like.
And I think you can, don't quote me on this, but I think you can get some kind of write-offs if you stay there a certain amount of the year. Is that true?
For an owner?
Yeah, if you're an owner of an Airbnb, can you get some kind of...
You can only stay there a certain amount of time. It has to be primarily a rental to get the taxes.
Okay.
But, yeah, and it's very minimal.
Okay. I didn't know how big it was, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it's mostly for short-term rentals.
Myth busting on the
Mythbuster
on the Work-Life Balance podcast.
But it's, I mean, but if you wanted to go pop in for a weekend and have that little vacation spot, you have that opportunity, and that's kind of cool.
Which I think numbers are very important to focus on here too, because... And location's very important to focus on, and restrictions in that location, because that's something we didn't hit on. Is Nashville is very strict with their Airbnbs, and it's not like, which I feel like a lot of people have the misconception where you just go buy a random property. Oh, I'm going to make this an Airbnb. That's not how it works, and we don't want to give you the false perception of that being how it works. And then also you need to be very picky about the properties. Like we see this multiple times for clients that we've worked with, is like, you need to get pro formas. You need to see numbers.
100%.
And those numbers need to make sense for however you're putting your money into that property, because not a lot of them make sense, which we see a lot of.
Well,
you see properties overpriced.
Yeah. It's hard to justify if you're taking a loan on $1 million Airbnb, because let's get real. You're not getting an Airbnb in Nashville that's going to cost you less than that.
Yeah, unless it's at Riverfront Condos.
Riverfront Condos, you can get one. Those are super cute. Tempted to buy that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at $1 million, you've got a pretty large mortgage payment. Now, unless you're paying cash, you crunch your numbers differently. Mm-hmm. But if you're paying with a loan, that mortgage payment and how often that needs to rent without the vacancy factor included, which let's call it 80% is about the rental, the vacancy factor. So 20% vacant, 80% rented is pretty good average for Nashville. So you need to be able to run those numbers and make sure that makes sense. Otherwise, you're in the red. And what does that do for you? Nothing. Now you've got something that you've already paid overpriced for because they're limited in the neighborhood or in the town, and you're not getting the rental income. So be wary on that. Make sure you're talking to, one, a really good experienced agent like us, and two, your tax and accountant. Your tax accountant.
For sure. Right? And I can't speak for all agents across Middle Tennessee, but I can say for Kara and I, like, we're going to be transparent with you. If you're looking at a property and the numbers don't make sense, we're going to tell you, hey, this does not make sense. This is not a good investment. Just because, you know, we sell real estate, obviously everybody wants to make sales.
Sure.
But it's not a good sale in good faith if you're selling an overpriced property to somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. I fully agree.
What do you think about the trend of Airbnbs, though? Like, do you think that they're going to start to decline? I know that that's a huge topic among really the media, and everybody right now is like, is that a good investment? Is it not? Because you don't know what's going to happen with them.
I think it's good to look back at that Airbnb podcast we had with Brandon. Airbnb or Best, because that's our personal property manager, and he had a really good perspective on it. I mean, Airbnb's made it very difficult for people, for owners. They're much more on the client side than they are the owner side. And for us to feel comfortable having our house for rent, we need to have that support from Airbnb. Otherwise, what are we using them for? Let's just owner rent it, like our, direct book.
Right.
So I don't know. Nashville, if you drive down Nashville any day of the week, you're going to see so many cranes. And guess what's coming in? Hotels. Yep. So if you can't compete with the hotels as far as what your nightly rentals look like, you're not going to win. They're going to go, hey, but the W is giving me $150 a night, and you're trying to get $400 a night for your Airbnb. Now, granted, you can get, 10 girls in there for a bachelorette party, and they don't have to have separate rooms, but they're thinking, well, shit, we'll just pack us all in here, and people can sleep on the floor.
Yeah, so, and room service, room cleaning, like all of that stuff that hotels have that Airbnbs don't. Which, again, like, there's pros and cons for Airbnbs versus hotels. Like, you get the luxury of having your own space, your own unit. Some of them come with a pool and a rooftop, which is awesome if you're wanting to stay in the same place. But I know back, 5-6 years ago when Airbnbs really started to become popular, that it was a better deal than hotels for a long time. Yeah. And then a lot of these cities like Nashville and Destin and all of these started putting, like, hotel tax.
Oh, too. You got to pay hotel tax.
Got to pay hotel tax because now you're taking business. And then now looking at it, it's almost cheaper to go to a hotel rather than an Airbnb in certain locations.
It's the Airbnb fees.
Yeah.
The Airbnb fees are, what did he say? They were 30% or something.
Yeah, at least.
Like 30% markup on what the number is. So, yeah, I mean, again, risky. I've had a good experience with ours, but we also bought ours in 2020 when, you know, the market wasn't like it is today. So the ROI looks different.
Yeah.
If I was to put it on the market today, then the numbers wouldn't work for the next buyer. So it is what it is. Like, just be wary of your location and also the size of it. I wouldn't suggest you buy a 1-bedroom Airbnb.
No, be smart.
Be smart. And even a 2-bedroom's pushing it because Nashville is a bachelorette capital of the damn world, right?
You need to sleep minimum 8 people.
You need lots of beds and you need a rooftop. And then you're flying high.
Yeah.
So be wary of your location and what style Airbnb you get.
Absolutely.
And then, okay, so this is another one that's interesting. And again, you got to have experience if you're going to do this. But land development is another way to invest in real estate. Right. So I don't really know how to even preface this one, but like, you got to have cash because you're probably going to hold that land for a long time. And that's because it takes a long time to go through city planning or county planning, rezoning to whatever you're planning on doing on that land. Unless you're buying it already mapped, then you're paying a huge premium for that. But if you are buying it to map it for a subdivision or, you know, apartment complex or whatever, you need to be able to have, we call that land banking, which means your money is locked in that land until it's time for the use of the land to actually be like purposed. Yeah. Right? So
yeah, and there's many ways that you can go about it. Like, it just depends on what position you're in. Again, how much money do you have? Do you have people backing you, or are you doing it on your own?
Right.
Because you can go buy a piece of land. You can do only the survey work for it, map it out, and then sell the lots. Or you could keep it, get a contractor to do the builds for you, and then sell the builds. Like, there's so many ways that you could go about it.
Absolutely.
But I feel like that is one of, which is probably why it was last on the list, but it's one of the less attainable ways of investing for people.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge, one, it's a really big risk, but two, it's hard to be able to have the funds for that.
It's hard to have the funds, and when you start the project day one, and it takes you 2 years to get that rezoned and mapped, that market is not necessarily what you thought it was in the beginning. So, you know, when you put your number on, okay, so I'm going to map it, and each property is going to be X amount of money, and, you know, this is what I'm going to be able to sell this for to the new, like, some massive developer that's going to buy it, and the market takes a shit, then guess what? There goes all that time, 2 years maybe wasted. I mean, I don't know.
2 years and a lot of money.
And a lot of money. So it is risky. It can be super rewarding.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
it can go both ways.
It can go both ways. So again, risky.
But all of these can go both ways. That's just the risk.
It is.
But you know what? Real estate, I think, from my opinion, my point of view, is always a long-term investment. Unless, you know, you are flipping to make a profit. But then if you're just reinvesting that profit, it's still a long-term investment.
Yeah.
And you're building your money that way. So it's definitely tangible. That's the reason I like it. I don't understand the stock market. We've talked about this many times.
Yeah.
So that's just not the way I want to go about it, because I don't want to put my money in something I don't understand.
Understand or control.
Yeah.
And it could take one thing, and that takes a crash, and then, oh my gosh, there goes all that money I've been saving. It's gone. Which, again, it can happen in real estate, and it looks to me that it's coming. I don't know. But what's another topic? But I just, and if let me sidebar this one. For everybody that's out there that's so scared of the market taking a little dip, if you are interested in getting into investing, embrace the dip, because that's when you will get in and you'll be able to buy a property that's underpriced, and you'll be able to have that appreciation in the next few years when the market comes back up.
Absolutely.
So be very cautious of the market if you are looking to buy a rental, a flip, short term, gosh, everything on here, commercial, land developing, everything that, all the different ways. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Which I actually did hear somebody say the other day, which really resonated, and I've told some people since then. You only lose or make money on real estate when you sell it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So even, I know so many people are like, what if this happens? What if this happens? If you sit there, for real estate purposes, if you sit there and continue to think about what if, and don't do anything, you're selling yourself short and you're going to miss out.
Right.
And you only lose money if you sell in a down market. Like, if you're holding on to real estate, hold out because it's going to go back up.
Right.
And in Middle Tennessee, we talked about this many times. I don't think it's slowing down as far as prices go. Prices just aren't, I don't think, and I don't want to I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think they're just going to drop $100,000, drop $200,000. Unless something crazy happens to the Great Depression, I think prices around here are going to continue to go up.
I mean, I feel the same way. But I wanted to say something back to what you just said real quick, because this is just my experience. But so when I bought the first rental, and you look back at property history, and it said that it had sold back in 1990, I don't know, 2 or something. I don't remember what year it was, for $200,000. And I was writing an offer for $30,000 on this house.
I remember you telling me that.
I probably have shared the story, but this is just what's cracks me up about it. And I was like, there's no way that this little 800 square foot shit box in the middle of South Modesto, California, is ever going to, I can't even imagine somebody paid $200,000 for this house. And I'm, so we were like, this is so fun, whatever. So flip forward 10 years later when we sold that, and we sold it for $230,000, I think.
Yeah. I think because it was numbers that it was exactly what you paid plus what they bought.
Oh my God. I was crazy. Dumbfounded, you've got to be kidding. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
So
you made a hell of a profit.
And so that's just a very simple example of the market was way up here way back then. Then it took a big dump, and this was I don't know what years. I guess it was 2009.
Yeah,
coming out of the recession.
Yeah, I remember you telling me the story. I think it was right after it happened.
And then we held it until we moved out here. So no, I've got my dates wrong, but I mean it was 10 years of holding.
Yeah. Well, if you bought it in 2009 after the crash and you sold in 19, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess that. God, what year are we in? But anyways, that's just an example of how crazy the market can be. And if you're prepared, so step one, when she asked you to make a plan, if you're prepared and you know what your plan is, and you're reading the news every day right now, and it's scaring the shit out of everybody that we're going to have this massive drop and blah, 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 and loss of jobs and all the stuff is going to fall from underneath us. If you're prepared to go and start picking up investments, you're going to be ahead of the curve, and you're going to be that 1% that invests like every other millionaire in the country.
100%. And you know what? As far as real estate agents go, if you're in this business for the long term, there are always going to be people buying, and there's always going to be people selling. It doesn't matter what kind of market you're in. And it's just the kind of people that are buying and the types of buyers that you have. Yeah. So from a realtor standpoint, don't be scared of what's happening in the market. Just keep treating your people well.
Right. And stay on your path. Make your plan.
Absolutely.
Get your future goal in. Is it 1 or 10? And what does it look like? And how are you going to get there? Yeah. And as always, we're here. If you have questions, shoot them over. This was just a quick overgo of it all, but there's so many different ways of doing it.
For sure.
We don't want to overwhelm you. So
there's probably more than what we had listed today, but
this is just a good little starting point.
Yeah. But share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care. Get out there and invest.
Yes.